In the long story of human history, a single month is barely a heartbeat. And yet, for each of us as individuals, January possesses an extraordinary symbolic power. It is the moment when we stand at the frontier between who we have been and who we might become. Win January, win the year is not merely a motivational slogan. It is a profound reminder of how humans shape their own narratives. From ancient times to the digital age, our species has been guided by the stories we tell ourselves. January is the opening chapter of the story you will write in the coming year. When you take control of this chapter through discipline, clarity, and purposeful action, you influence the direction of every chapter that follows. Because momentum is not just a physical law, it is a psychological one. So today, I want to explore how mastering these first 31 days can alter the trajectory of your entire year, not through grand resolutions, but through small, consistent decisions that accumulate into transformation. When we look at the structure of a year, it is helpful to understand that time itself is not merely a sequence of months arranged on a calendar. Rather, time is a framework inside which human beings construct meaning, identity, and aspiration. January is not inherently more powerful than any other month in terms of astronomic or biological cycles. Yet it carries an extraordinary psychological charge because it represents a threshold moment. It stands at the intersection between memory and imagination, between what we have already lived and what we hope to become. This is why the idea that if you win January, you can win the year resonates so strongly. Speaks to our deep instinct as storytelling creatures to seize the opening chapter of a narrative and shape it with intention before the plot begins to unfold with its unavoidable surprises. In many ways, the human mind is designed to assign symbolic weight to beginnings. The first step, the first day, the first page, these are not random moments. They act as cognitive anchors that set expectations and establish momentum. If the first chapter of a book is compelling, we assume the entire book will be worth reading. If the first minutes of a conversation are warm and engaging, we expect the relationship will flourish. January functions similarly in the story of a year. When we consciously shape this month with discipline, clarity, and purpose, we create a psychological template that influences how we respond to the months that follow. Even though February has the same number of hours, it does not carry the same symbolic gravitational pull. January is where we decide the tone, the rhythm, and the standard. It is important to recognize that humans are not simply passive observers of time. We are active participants in the construction of our personal timelines. We choose how to interpret events, where to allocate emotional energy, and which habits to nurture or abandon. The idea of winning January is therefore less about external achievement and more about internal alignment. It is about creating coherence between who we think we are, who we want to be, and what we are willing to do repeatedly. When those elements align, the rest of the year doesn't become effortless, but it does become navigable. It becomes a landscape we can cross with intention rather than confusion. There is a fascinating dimension of human psychology that suggests early actions enjoy an outsized influence on long-term outcomes because they shape identity. When a person exercises every day in January, they are not just burning calories. They are crafting a story about themselves as someone who prioritizes health, resilience, and consistency. When someone wakes early throughout January, they begin to internalize a self-image of a person who honors discipline over comfort. These identities, once established, become self-fulfilling. Humans naturally act in accordance with the stories they believe about themselves. If January becomes the month in which those stories are deliberately sculpted, the rest of the year becomes a continuation of an internal narrative already in motion. Momentum, in this psychological sense, is not an abstract motivational concept. It is a real cognitive phenomenon. When early actions align with goals, the brain experiences small wins that reinforce behavior. Neurochemical rewards signal that the effort is meaningful, achievable, and worth repeating. This chain reaction creates a feedback loop that makes the desired behavior easier in February, March, and beyond. Conversely, when January slips away in a haze of confusion or procrastination, the brain creates a very different narrative. It begins to associate the year with delayed beginnings, compromised standards, or unresolved intentions. These stories too become self-fulfilling. It is not that the year cannot be redeemed later, but the psychological tax becomes higher. Starting strong is vastly more efficient than restarting from weakness. Another reason January holds transformative potential is that collective psychology amplifies individual psychology. Across cultures, January is viewed as the moment of renewal, resolution, and realignment. Even if one does not explicitly participate in resolutions, the social atmosphere creates a shared sense of recalibration. This collective energy can be harnessed or ignored. To harness it is to recognize that humans do not evolve in isolation. Our habits, beliefs, and behaviors often reflect the people around us. When an entire society leans towards self-improvement, reflection, or preparation, individuals can ride that wave, using as additional momentum toward their own objectives. It is easier to start running when you see thousands of others tying their shoelaces. This is not conformity, it is strategic utilization of social psychology. There is also a deeper anthropological perspective on why beginnings matter so profoundly. Throughout history, rituals of renewal have played an essential role in maintaining cultural coherence and personal meaning. Ancient societies used the start of seasons, harvest cycles, or lunar phases to symbolize the beginning of something new. These rituals were not arbitrary. They helped individuals reset emotionally and psychologically. January, in modern culture, functions as such a ritual, even if we don't call it one. It is the moment people feel permitted to reimagine themselves, to shed outdated behaviors, and to set fresh intentions. Understanding January as a modern ritual gives it strategic importance. It means this month is not simply a date on a calendar, but a psychological portal through which transformation becomes socially acceptable and internally believable. Winning January, therefore, requires more than motivation. It requires an understanding of how human behavior actually works. People often fail not because their goals are too ambitious, but because their systems are poorly designed. The beginning of the year is the ideal moment to redesign those systems. A system is not merely a routine, it is the architecture of daily life. It includes the environment, the triggers, the accountability structures, and the emotional rewards. When January is used to design these systems intelligently, the rest of the year becomes a process of following paths already carved rather than hacking through cognitive wilderness. Consider the role of attention. In an age of constant distraction, attention has become one of the most valuable resources a human can control. January is a rare moment when attention is more concentrated because people are reflective and less entrenched in old rhythms. This heightened attention can be channeled into establishing priorities. Once priorities are set, they function as filters for decisions throughout the year. When you know what truly matters, everything else becomes easier to decline. The greatest enemy of consistency is not failure. It is the erosion of attention by trivialities. Winning January means reclaiming this attention before the world scatters it again. An equally crucial aspect of owning January is the cultivation of clarity. Clarity is often misunderstood as the simple articulation of goals, but it is much more profound. Clarity is the stripping away of illusions, excuses, and contradictions. It is the admission of what one truly desires, even when those desires require discomfort or sacrifice. It is the recognition of patterns that sabotage progress. In January, when the mind is relatively unburdened by accumulated chaos, clarity is easier to achieve. Once clarity is established early, it illuminates the path ahead. Without clarity, even the most determined individual can spend the year in motion without moving forward. An interesting observation about early year behavior is how it interacts with the concept of identity prediction. Humans constantly project their future selves based on current behavior. When we act with discipline in January, we subconsciously assume our February and March selves will also act with discipline. This expectation strengthens the continuity of behavior across time. But when we act with hesitation or inconsistency early on, the projected future self becomes uncertain or weakened. The mind begins to distrust its own intentions. Winning January is, therefore, a way of telling the future self, "You can rely on me." This internal trust becomes a powerful engine for long-term achievement. From a broader philosophical perspective, January also offers a unique opportunity to confront the tension between freedom and structure. Humans crave freedom, yet too much freedom without structure becomes a recipe for drifting, not growth. January is the moment when one can consciously design the structure that will later enable greater freedom. Establishing routines, limitations, and commitments may feel restrictive initially, but they create pathways that remove cognitive burden and emotional indecision. When these structures are built early, they liberate mental energy later in the year. The paradox is that discipline installed in January becomes freedom enjoyed in June, September, and December. To win January, one must also understand the danger of perfectionism. Many people enter the month with unrealistic expectations of radical transformation. They imagine themselves becoming entirely different beings overnight. This vision collapses under the weight of reality, leading to discouragement and abandonment. The key is recognizing that January is not about perfection, but trajectory. A 1-degree shift in direction in January can create a vastly different destination by December. It is the month to make decisions that are small enough to sustain, yet significant enough to accumulate. The power of January lies not in dramatic reinvention, but in subtle redirection. Another crucial insight is that January magnifies honesty. It is the moment when one can take inventory without the emotional baggage that often clouds judgment later in the year. Honest assessment of habits, relationships, priorities, and weaknesses allows for meaningful adjustments. When honesty is practiced early, it becomes easier to maintain throughout the year. Without this honesty, even the best plans crumble. Every great achievement begins not with a monumental leap, but with a single small step. The most extraordinary lives are not constructed overnight. They are built day by day, choice by choice, moment by moment. Yet so often, we overlook the power of these small decisions. We wait for a grand opportunity, a dramatic shift, a sudden surge of willpower to transform our lives. But the truth is far simpler and far more accessible. The daily actions you take, the tiny choices you make when no one is watching, are the bricks from which your future is built. Each decision, repeated consistently, compounds, growing quietly, invisibly, until one day, the cumulative force becomes undeniable. Think about the power of consistency. The person who decides to wake up 30 minutes earlier every morning begins to gain time for focus, reflection, and preparation. At first, it seems insignificant, almost imperceptible. Yet weeks pass, and that 30-minute window transforms into hours of clarity, creativity, and productivity. The early riser begins to gain momentum, one decision stacking upon another, each reinforcing the next. Energy follows attention, and attention follows action. This is the magic of compounding. The smallest steps, when aligned with purpose, accumulate into exponential growth. The same principle applies to any area of life: health, relationships, skill, wealth, or mindset. A single hour of deliberate practice on a skill each day may feel trivial initially. After a week, it is progress. After a month, it is transformation. After a year, it becomes mastery. A single act of kindness, repeated consistently, transforms relationships, builds trust, and creates an atmosphere of respect and cooperation around you. The choices you make today are not isolated. They ripple forward, shaping your tomorrow in ways you cannot yet see. The small, invisible decisions of the present are the architects of the future you desire. Most people underestimate the power of these choices because they are seduced by immediate results. Human nature is wired to seek instant gratification. We want recognition, reward, or visible change now. But lasting success is rarely immediate. It is the accumulation of consistent effort over time. A single day of discipline does not make you successful, but repeated days, one stacking on the other, form the bedrock of excellence. Momentum builds quietly, but it builds relentlessly, and it is unstoppable when nurtured intentionally. The path to greatness is paved with daily rituals. A habit, once formed, reduces the need for willpower and decision-making. It becomes automatic, a default mode of action. When you harness the compounding effect, your habits work for you, silently building the life you envision. This is why champions, innovators, and high achievers emphasize routines over inspiration. Inspiration ignites, but routines sustain. It is not the extraordinary act that creates lasting results. It is the ordinary, repeated consistently, that propels you forward. Imagine your life as a canvas. Each day, each decision adds a brushstroke. Some strokes are bold, some subtle, but everyone contributes to the final masterpiece. Neglect a day, a week, or a month, and gaps appear, holes that grow if ignored. Invest in each day, however small, and the canvas begins to take shape, clarity emerging where once there was only chaos. The compounding effect of your choices transforms your life from randomness into purpose, from potential into reality. Discipline is the engine that drives this process. Motivation is fleeting, excitement is temporary, but discipline is enduring. Small decisions require discipline to maintain, especially when immediate results are invisible. When you resist temptation, prioritize effort, and choose the path that aligns with your long-term vision, you invest in yourself. These moments of resistance, repeated day after day, are the foundation of extraordinary lives. The small victories accumulate, reinforcing confidence, belief, and identity. Consistency is also a form of courage. It takes courage to keep showing up when no one notices, when results seem slow, when progress is invisible. Yet these are precisely the moments that determine who succeeds and who fails. Each decision to persist, each moment of focus, each small action in alignment with your goals strengthens your trajectory. Success is not sudden. It is the product of sustained effort, compounded over time until one day the results become undeniable. Time magnifies action. Small efforts today grow into massive outcomes tomorrow. A single book read each day develops knowledge that accumulates into wisdom. A single workout, repeated daily, transforms your health and energy. A single act of intentional kindness builds relationships that support you for a lifetime. The key is to start, to choose action over inaction, and to repeat relentlessly. Every day counts, every choice matters, and the power of accumulation cannot be overstated. Many fail not because the task is too difficult, but because they underestimate the process. They expect transformation to be instant, visible, or dramatic. Life rarely works that way. The most profound changes are invisible at first, like the growth of a tree. Roots spread deep before the first sprout emerges. Likewise, your habits and choices create invisible structures in your mind, body, and environment that later support extraordinary results. Trust the process. Honor the daily decisions, and the growth will follow naturally. Focus amplifies compounding. Your energy, attention, and effort are finite. But when directed insistently toward high-value activities, the return multiplies. Small decisions aligned with purpose reinforce one another, creating momentum that accelerates growth. Conversely, scattered effort, inconsistency, or distraction erodes potential. The power of compounding is unlocked when decisions are purposeful, repeated, and intentional. Every decision you make carries weight. Choosing to learn rather than ignore, to act rather than procrastinate, to persevere rather than give up. These choices accumulate into patterns that define your life. Your habits are the scaffolding of your destiny, the invisible framework on which success is built. One small choice today may not seem to matter, but repeated daily, it becomes unstoppable. The ordinary choices of today are the extraordinary results of tomorrow. The beauty of this principle is that it applies universally. Wealth, health, relationships, skills, and mindset all respond to compounding action. A single dollar saved each day grows into financial security. A single page read each day grows into knowledge and perspective. A single act of effort, repeated, grows into mastery. No matter where you start, the principle works. Consistency, persistence, and daily action are the universal laws of achievement. Do not wait for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, or the perfect mood. Start now, start small, and start consistently. The compounding effect of your choices will carry you forward, building momentum faster than you imagine. Every day is a chance to reinforce positive patterns, to take control of your trajectory, and to create the life you desire. The small decisions you make now will define your future self, your legacy, and the life you leave behind. Every day presents countless small opportunities. Choose wisely. Each decision to act, each refusal to give in to comfort, each embrace of discipline becomes a thread in the fabric of success. Like compound interest, the effect is invisible at first, but over time, it transforms your reality. Remember, success is rarely explosive. It is the accumulation of small wins, the steady alignment of choices with vision, the quiet building of momentum day after day. Ordinary decisions taken consistently lead to extraordinary outcomes. The power to shape your future lies not in rare inspiration, but in deliberate, repeated action. Start today. Make the choice to act, to persist, to invest in yourself. Commit to the small decisions, the habits, and the routines that compound into excellence. Every day is an opportunity to shape your destiny, to build the life you dream of, and to transform potential into achievement. Your future is not determined by luck, circumstance, or a single moment of brilliance. It is shaped by the cumulative force of your daily choices, the power of compounding effort, and the habits you cultivate consistently over time. Dimension that is often overlooked: patience. January is a month that seems brief, yet within its 31 days, it contains the seeds of endurance. Human culture has long understood that small beginnings, when nurtured patiently, lead to extraordinary outcomes. A tree does not grow overnight, nor does a river carve a canyon in a single storm. Similarly, the habits and decisions made in January are not measured solely by immediate results. Their true impact is revealed through the cumulative effect of repeated, consistent effort. Patience is therefore not passive. It is a conscious cultivation of trust in processes that are invisible in the moment but transformative over time. This patience is intimately tied to the notion of temporal perspective. Humans are unique in their ability to imagine themselves in the future, to simulate consequences of actions that have not yet occurred. Yet this gift is double-edged. It can inspire foresight or breed procrastination. January offers an opportunity to exercise the skill of temporal foresight in a concrete way. Each decision becomes a signal to the future self about what is valued. what is prioritized, and what is non-negotiable. The month functions as a laboratory where the mind experiments with delayed gratification and long-term planning. Decisions made here are not just tactical, they are ethical statements about commitment, self-respect, and vision. A deeper examination of human cognition reveals why early wins are disproportionately powerful. The brain rewards novelty and progress with bursts of dopamine, reinforcing behavior. January, as a new beginning, heightens the salience of actions because they are perceived as departures from past routines. This creates an amplified feedback loop. Small achievements feel larger, and the psychological impact of consistent behavior is multiplied. When harnessed deliberately, this loop can accelerate the establishment of habits that might otherwise take months to consolidate. In essence, the month's symbolic weight becomes neurochemical leverage, a natural advantage for those who act intentionally. Winning January also requires attention to narrative coherence. Humans are storytellers by nature. We understand our lives through the lens of cause and effect, intention and consequence. Every choice made in the early days of the year contributes to the story we tell ourselves about who we are. Neglecting this narrative dimension leads to fragmentation. Goals are set but not followed. Routines are begun and abandoned. Identity becomes a series of contradictions. By consciously shaping the story in January, through deliberate actions, reflective practices, and consistent reinforcement, we align internal perception with external behavior. This alignment is crucial because humans instinctively act in accordance with their self-narratives. The month is a chance to author the beginning of a coherent, compelling story. It is also vital to consider the interplay between environmental design and personal intention. Humans are exquisitely sensitive to context. Our surroundings, social networks, and even the layout of our daily schedules profoundly influence behavior. January is a moment to engineer these environments in service of goals. Clearing physical clutter, setting digital boundaries, and arranging social accountability systems are practical yet psychologically transformative steps. When the environment signals possibility and discipline, the brain is more likely to follow suit. Winning January is therefore an act of design, not merely willpower. The notion of energy management is another key aspect. Energy is not a renewable resource in the conventional sense. It is finite, and its allocation determines efficacy. January, with its symbolic resonance, provides a natural opportunity to calibrate energy reserves, prioritize high-impact tasks, and eliminate distractions. When energy is invested intentionally, actions multiply in effect. Conversely, squandered energy early in the year creates inertia that hinders progress for months. Winning January is thus an exercise in strategic energy deployment, allocating cognitive, emotional, and physical resources to maximize the returns of effort. An overlooked dimension of this process is emotional regulation. Humans are inherently emotional beings. Mood, fear, and anxiety profoundly shape decisions. The first month of the year is uniquely conducive to emotional reset because it marks a temporal boundary from which old regrets and unresolved conflicts can be bracketed. Emotional clarity in January creates the psychological conditions for disciplined action, resilient response to setbacks, and proactive problem solving. Without managing emotion, the most well-designed plans crumble under the weight of stress, disappointment, or self-doubt. There is also the social dimension. Humans are not isolated agents. We exist in networks of interdependent relationships. January provides an opportunity to establish or reinforce social contracts that support long-term objectives. Whether through mentors, peers, or collaborative projects, early engagement strengthens accountability and accelerates the internalization of discipline. Social structures can amplify the psychological power of January, creating collective momentum that individual effort alone cannot generate. From a philosophical perspective, winning January is about embracing temporal intentionality, the conscious use of time as a resource. Time is often perceived as a flowing river beyond control, yet humans can shape their experience of it through deliberate sequencing of choices. The month functions as a microcosm of a larger temporal philosophy,